The knife glinted under the crystal chandelier for exactly half a second before it plunged toward the old woman's chest. Jasmine Akaji didn't think. Thinking would have meant staying frozen behind the water pitcher she'd been holding. Thinking would have meant watching a 72-year-old woman die 3 feet in front of her. So Jasmine didn't think. She moved. Her body collided with expensive silk and old bones as she threw herself between the blade and Mrs. Park's sunny. The knife that was meant to pierce a heart instead tore through Jasmine's forearm, slicing upward across her shoulder in a line of white-hot agony that made her vision explode into stars. She heard screaming. Maybe it was hers. Maybe it was the chaos erupting around her as bodyguards drew weapons and tables crashed to the floor. Jasmine hit the ground hard, her head bouncing off the polished wood. Blood bloomed across her white server uniform, spreading like spilled wine. Above her, the elderly Korean woman she'd just saved stared down with eyes as black and sharp as obsidian, shock written across her carefully composed face for the first time in decades. The pain was everything. It swallowed Jasmine whole, dragging her down into a place where sound became muffled and the ornate private dining room of Moonlight Garden restaurant blurred into abstract shapes. She tried to speak, to apologize for the mess she was making on their expensive floor, but her tongue felt thick and useless in her mouth. Then there were hands on her face. Small, wrinkled hands that smelled of expensive perfume and something herbal. Mrs. Park had dropped to her knees beside Jasmine, cradling her head with a tenderness that seemed impossible from a woman who'd been negotiating with killers 30 seconds ago. Jasmine heard shouting in Korean, footsteps thundering, more gunshots that made her flinch even through the shock. And then a voice cut through everything else, sharp and commanding and absolutely terrified. Yama, the man who burst through the dining room doors, moved like violence given human form. He was tall for a Korean man, maybe 6 feet, with shoulders that strained against his black suit and eyes that swept the room with the cold efficiency of someone trained to assess threats in milliseconds. His gun was already drawn, already tracking toward the men his mother's bodyguards had pinned against the wall. But then he saw his mother on the floor, saw the blood, saw Jasmine. Jinwoo Park crossed the distance in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside them, his weapon never wavering from the attackers. Up close, Jasmine could see the sharp angles of his face, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the way his jaw clenched so tight, she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. Who did this? His voice was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded hurricanes. Mrs. Park spoke rapidly in Korean, one hand still cradling Jasmine's head while the other pressed against the wound on her shoulder. The old woman's hands were covered in blood now. Jasmine's blood. The absurdity of it made her want to laugh, but what came out was a choked sob. Jinwoo's eyes finally landed on Jasmine's face. For a moment, something flickered in those dark eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition of something he hadn't expected to find on his mother's dining room floor. A black woman bleeding out in a server's uniform. "Who are you?" he asked in English, his accent thick but his words clear. Jasmine tried to answer. Tried to explain that she was nobody, just a waitress who needed this job, who needed the tips from serving in the private rooms where rich people came to have meetings they didn't want the world to know about. But her mouth wouldn't cooperate. The words came out slurred and wrong. "I'm sorry. The mess. I'll clean it. Please don't fire me." If you've ever made a split-second decision that changed everything, drop a comment below. What would you do if you had to choose between your safety and a stranger's life? And if you're already hooked on Jasmine's story, smash that like button and subscribe, because what happens next is absolutely insane. Jinwoo said something sharp in Korean to his men. 2 of them immediately moved to lift Jasmine, but he waved them off with an abrupt gesture. Instead, he holstered his gun and slid his arms beneath her himself, one under her knees and one supporting her back with a careful awareness of her wounded shoulder. The world tilted as he lifted her. Jasmine's head lolled against his chest, and she could feel his heartbeat through the expensive fabric of his suit. It was racing. This man who looked like he'd been carved from granite and trained to feel nothing was terrified. "Stay with me," he commanded, and Jasmine wasn't sure if he was talking to her or his mother or both of them. Nobody dies tonight. The last thing Jasmine saw before consciousness slipped away was Mrs. Park's face hovering above her, and the old woman's lips moving in what might have been a prayer or a promise. Then there was nothing but darkness and the distant sound of sirens that would never be allowed to arrive. When Jasmine's eyes cracked open again, she knew immediately she wasn't in a hospital. Hospitals didn't have 18-foot ceilings with crown molding. They didn't have walls covered in silk wallpaper or windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a view of Seoul's glittering skyline that must have cost more than Jasmine would earn in 5 lifetimes. She was in a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. The sheets were crisp and cool against her skin, and for a confused moment, she wondered if she'd died, and this was some kind of afterlife waiting room. But then the pain registered, a deep throbbing ache that radiated from her shoulder down through her arm, and she knew she was very much alive. A man sat in a chair across the room, silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows. He wasn't looking at her. His attention was fixed on the city below, his profile sharp and contemplative in the ambient light from outside. But Jasmine knew he was aware of her. She could feel the weight of his attention like a physical thing. You're awake. Jinwoo Park didn't turn from the window. Good. My mother was getting worried. Jasmine tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her shoulder, stealing her breath. Strong hands were suddenly there, steadying her, and she realized Jinwoo had moved across the room faster than should have been possible for someone his size. Don't move, he said, and it wasn't a suggestion. He adjusted the pillows behind her with surprising gentleness, then stepped back, maintaining a careful distance. The doctor said you need to stay still for at least 48 hours. The knife went deep. Another inch, and it would have severed an artery. The clinical way he delivered that information sent a chill down Jasmine's spine. This was a man who understood violence intimately, who could probably recite the exact angle and pressure needed to kill someone with a blade. Where am I? Her voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. Safe. He finally turned to look at her fully, and Jasmine felt the full weight of his gaze. His eyes were dark, almost black in the dim light, and they studied her with an intensity that made her want to pull the sheets up higher. You're in my home. My private doctor treated you. No hospitals. No police reports. Panic fluttered in Jasmine's chest. I need to go to work. My shift. They'll fire me if I don't show up. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Jinwoo's face. You threw yourself in front of a knife and you're worried about a waitressing job? I need that job. Desperation made her voice crack. I send money home. My mother, my sister, they're counting on me. I can't afford to lose it. I can't afford any of this. She gestured at the opulent room, at the bandages she could feel wrapped around her shoulder and arm. I don't have insurance. I can't pay for a private doctor. I can't. Stop. The single word cut through her rising panic. Jinwoo moved closer, not quite sitting on the bed, but close enough that she could see the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. You saved my mother's life. Money is not your concern anymore. Jasmine stared at him, trying to process words that made no sense. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. Not yet. He stood, straightening his suit jacket in a gesture that seemed automatic. Rest. Heal. Everything else will be explained when you're stronger. Before she could respond, the door opened. Mrs. Park's son, he entered carrying a tray, and the sight was so incongruous that Jasmine wondered if she was hallucinating. The woman who'd been negotiating with gangsters hours ago was now carefully balancing a bowl of soup, her movements practiced and precise. You're awake, Mrs. Park said in accented but clear English. She set the tray on the bedside table and reached out to touch Jasmine's face with cool fingers. The gesture was surprisingly maternal, and it made Jasmine's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. How do you feel? Confused, Jasmine admitted. And scared. Mrs. Park's expression softened. Good. Fear keeps you alive in this world. She gestured to the soup. Samjitang. Ginseng chicken soup. It will help you heal. Jasmine looked between the elderly woman and her son, these two people who existed in a world she couldn't begin to understand. Why am I here? Why not a hospital? Because hospitals ask questions, Jinwoo said flatly. Questions lead to police. Police lead to complications neither of us need. So I'm what? A witness you need to keep quiet. Something sharp flashed in Jinwoo's eyes. You're a woman who made an incredibly brave and incredibly stupid decision. And now you're alive because I made sure of it. Jinwoo. Mrs. Park's voice carried a warning. She turned back to Jasmine, settling into the chair her son had vacated. What he means is that the men who attacked me tonight won't stop because they failed once. You saw them. You can identify them. That makes you a liability to them. The words landed like stones in Jasmine's stomach. They'll come after me. They would, Jinwoo corrected. If they could find you. But they can't. Because as of tonight, Jasmine Akeji no longer exists in any system they can access. Fear spiked through her, sharp and cold. What did you do? Protected you. He said it simply, as if erasing someone's entire digital footprint was as casual as ordering coffee. Your apartment has been cleared. Your belongings are here. Your employer has been told you resigned for family reasons. As far as anyone knows, you left Korea. Jasmine's hands clenched in the expensive sheets. You had no right. I had every right. Jinwoo's voice went hard. You saved my mother's life. In my world, that creates a debt. A bond. Do you understand what that means? Clearly not. Since you're talking about me like I'm some kind of possession, you can just move around. Mrs. Park made a small sound, and when Jasmine looked at her, the old woman was almost smiling. She has fire, she said to her son in Korean, though Jasmine caught enough to understand. I like her. Yama, this isn't about whether you like her, isn't it? Mrs. Park leaned forward, fixing her son with a look that made him fall silent. Then she turned back to Jasmine, and her expression grew serious. Child, do you know what a life debt means in our culture? Jasmine shook her head. It means that your life and mine are now bound together. You gave up your safety for mine. That is not a small thing. That is not something we can repay with money or gratitude. She paused, choosing her words carefully. In the old ways, such a debt would be honored with blood. Family blood. I don't want anything, Jasmine said desperately. I just want to go back to my life. That life is gone, Jinwoo said, not unkindly. The moment you stepped in front of that knife, it was gone. You can hate me for it if you want, but it doesn't change the reality. Jasmine felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd cried enough in Korea. Cried herself to sleep in her tiny shared apartment. Cried through video calls with her mother where she pretended everything was fine. Cried in restaurant bathrooms between shifts when the exhaustion and homesickness became too much. But she wouldn't cry in front of these people. Wouldn't give them that. So what happens now? She asked, forcing her voice to stay level. You keep me locked up here like some kind of prisoner? You're not a prisoner. Jinwoo moved to the window, looking out at the city. But you're not free to leave either. Not until we've dealt with the Busan tigers. Not until it's safe. And when will that be? He didn't answer. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications Jasmine didn't want to examine too closely. Mrs. Park stood, smoothing down her hanbok with elegant hands. Eat. Rest. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. She paused at the door, looking back at Jasmine with an expression that was equal parts gentle and fierce. You have the heart of a warrior, child. Whether you know it yet or not. Then she was gone, leaving Jasmine alone with Jinwoo and a bowl of soup she wasn't sure she could stomach. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jinwoo remained at the window, his back to her, and Jasmine studied his reflection in the glass. He looked like a man carrying the weight of empires on his shoulders, and maybe he was. She didn't know anything about him except that he was dangerous and powerful, and currently the only thing standing between her and people who wanted her dead. Why did you do it? He asked suddenly, his reflection's eyes meeting hers in the glass. Do what? Jump in front of a knife for a stranger. Jasmine didn't have a good answer. Or maybe she did, but it was too honest, too raw to share with this man who looked at the world through the lens of strategy and survival. I didn't think about it. I just moved. Instinct. He turned to face her. That's interesting. Most people's instincts tell them to run from danger, not toward it. Maybe I have bad instincts. Or exceptional ones. He crossed his arms, studying her with that intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through to her bones. My mother is right, you know. You do have the heart of a warrior. I'm a waitress from Lagos, Jasmine said tiredly. I'm not a warrior. I'm just someone who reacted without thinking. Warriors don't think. They act. That's what makes them warriors. He moved toward the door, then paused. The soup is good for healing. My mother made it herself, which is something she hasn't done in years. I'd eat it if I were you. Refusing her food would be insulting, and you really don't want to insult her. Is that a threat? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. An observation. Get some rest, Jasmine Akeji. Tomorrow, things get complicated. He left, and Jasmine was finally alone with her thoughts and the cooling bowl of soup. She stared at it for a long moment, then carefully reached for it with her good arm. The first sip was rich and warming, the kind of food that spoke of care and tradition and a world she'd never be part of. She was halfway through the bowl when exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Her eyes grew heavy, and she set the soup aside, sinking back into the pillows. As she drifted toward sleep, one thought circled her mind like a vulture. Her life as she knew it was over, and she had no idea what would take its place. Morning came with sunlight streaming through those massive windows and a young woman standing at the foot of Jasmine's bed, holding a garment bag. She was maybe 25, pretty in a sharp-edged way, with short hair dyed honey blonde, and a look of profound skepticism on her face. You're awake, the woman said in English, though her accent was thick. Good. I'm Mincio. I work for Park SSI. He said to bring you clothes and help you bathe. Jasmine struggled to sit up, wincing at the pain. I can bathe myself. With one arm? In a bathroom you've never seen? Sure. Mincio's expression suggested she'd seen far too much stupidity in her life to be impressed by false pride. Come on. Unless you want Park SSI to help you instead? The thought of Jinwoo Park seeing her naked was enough to get Jasmine moving. With Mincio's help, she made it to the bathroom, which was larger than her entire former apartment. The shower had 6 heads, and the bathtub could have fit 3 people comfortably. Mincio was efficient and surprisingly gentle as she helped Jasmine navigate the process of washing without getting her bandages wet. She didn't make small talk, didn't ask questions, just did her job with the kind of professional distance that made Jasmine wonder what exactly her job entailed. You're the one who saved the mother, Mincio said as she helped Jasmine dry off. It wasn't a question, I guess. Everyone's talking about it. The black waitress who took a knife for Mrs. Park. Mincio's eyes were unreadable. Some people think you're brave. Some think you're stupid. Some think you're an opportunist who saw a chance to get close to power. And what do you think? Mincio helped her into a robe that was softer than anything Jasmine had ever worn. I think you probably didn't think at all, which makes you either the luckiest or unluckiest woman in Seoul. She paused. Also, I think you're going to need to be a lot tougher if you want to survive what's coming. What's coming? But Mincio just shook her head and led her back to the bedroom, where she'd laid out clothes on the bed. Not the cheap polyester Jasmine was used to, but real designer pieces. A soft cashmere sweater in deep green, Tailored pants that probably cost more than a month's rent, leather boots that looked Italian. I can't wear these, Jasmine protested. They're too expensive. They're yours now. Everything in that closet is. Mincio gestured to a walk-in closet Jasmine hadn't noticed before. Through the open door, she could see racks of clothes, shelves of shoes, drawers that probably held more luxury than Jasmine had seen in her entire life. I don't understand. Why is he doing all this? Mincio's expression softened slightly. Because in his world, debts must be paid. And you saved his mother's life. That's not a small debt. She handed Jasmine the sweater. Get dressed. Mrs. Park wants to see you for breakfast. 20 minutes later, Jasmine found herself in a dining room that looked like it belonged in a palace. The table could have seated 20 people easily, but only 2 places were set, side by side near one end. Mrs. Park sat in one, looking regal in a hanbok of pale blue silk, and she smiled when Jasmine entered. Come sit. She patted the chair beside her. How are you feeling? Like I got stabbed, Jasmine said without thinking, then immediately regretted it. But Mrs. Park just laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Honest. I like that. She began serving food onto Jasmine's plate, an array of banchan and rice and soup that made Jasmine's stomach growl despite her anxiety. Eat. You need strength. They ate in silence for a few minutes, and Jasmine was surprised to find the food delicious, complex flavors that spoke of hours of preparation. Mrs. Park watched her with those sharp eyes, assessing, measuring. You're wondering why we're treating you like family instead of like a witness, Mrs. Park said finally. Jasmine set down her chopsticks. Yes. In Korea, especially in families like ours, loyalty and honor are everything. You showed both last night. You didn't have to protect me. We were strangers. But you did it anyway, without hesitation, without thought for your own safety. She reached over and squeezed Jasmine's good hand. That kind of courage is rare. That kind of selflessness is precious. I'm not special, Jasmine whispered. I just reacted. And that's what makes you special. Mrs. Park pulled back, her expression growing more serious. My son wants to protect you. Keep you safe until the danger passes. But I think we both know the danger won't pass. Not really. The Busan tigers have long memories and longer grudges. Fear curled in Jasmine's stomach. So what are you saying? I'm saying that safety is an illusion. What you need is power. Protection that can't be taken away. She paused, choosing her words carefully. In our world, there's only one kind of protection that's truly absolute. What's that? Family. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Jasmine stared at the old woman, trying to understand what she was suggesting. Before Mrs. Park could elaborate, the dining room doors opened. Jinwoo entered, and the energy in the room shifted immediately. He looked different in daylight, still dangerous, but somehow more human. He'd traded the formal suit for dark jeans and a black sweater that made his shoulders look even broader. Yama, he said, his tone carrying a warning. We talked about this. And I ignored you, as I often do. Mrs. Park smiled serenely. Sit. Eat. We have much to discuss. Jinwoo's jaw tightened, but he sat, though he didn't reach for any food. His eyes found Jasmine's across the table. How are you feeling? Confused, she admitted. Your mother was just saying something about family. Was she? His voice was flat, and the look he shot his mother could have frozen water. Mrs. Park ignored him completely. Jasmine, I want to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you have anyone in Korea? Anyone who would notice if you disappeared? The question sent ice down Jasmine's spine. Are you threatening me? No, child. I'm trying to help you. Mrs. Park leaned forward. You can't go back to your old life. Jinwoo is right about that. But you can't stay here indefinitely as a guest either. That would raise questions, cause complications. What you need is a legitimate reason to be here. A reason no one can question. Understanding began to dawn, terrible and impossible. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about family. Yama, enough. Jinwoo's voice cracked like a whip. This isn't a decision to make lightly. And yet it may be the only decision that keeps her alive. Mrs. Park turned back to Jasmine. In our world, family is untouchable. If you were family, the Busan tigers couldn't touch you without starting a war they can't win. Jasmine pushed back from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You're talking about adoption or something. Making me part of your organization. Not adoption. Mrs. Park's eyes glittered. Marriage. The word detonated in the silence like a bomb. Jasmine stared at Mrs. Park, certain she'd misheard. Marriage. You're suggesting marriage. I'm not suggesting, Mrs. Park said calmly. I'm proposing a solution to an impossible problem. This is insane. Jasmine looked to Jinwoo, expecting him to agree, to shut down this ridiculous idea. But he was staring at his mother with an expression she couldn't read, his jaw clenched so tight, she could see the muscle jumping. It's strategic, Mrs. Park continued as if Jasmine hadn't spoken. Marriage would make you untouchable. It would send a message to every faction and soul that loyalty to our family is rewarded at the highest level. It would explain your presence here, your protection, everything. It would also be a lie, Jasmine said desperately. I don't even know your son. I've spoken to him for maybe 10 minutes total. You can't seriously expect. I expect nothing, Jinwoo said quietly, speaking for the first time since his mother dropped the bomb. His eyes met Jasmine's, and there was something in them she couldn't name. Regret, maybe, or resignation. But my mother is right about one thing. As my wife, you would be untouchable, protected by laws older than Korea itself. As your wife, I'd be trapped. Jasmine's voice shook. Trapped in a world I don't understand, married to a man I don't know, living a lie for the rest of my life. Better trapped and alive than free and dead, Mrs. Park said bluntly. The words hit like a slap. Jasmine sank back into her chair, her wounded shoulder throbbing in time with her racing heart. There has to be another way. If there was, I take it. Jinwoo stood, moving to the windows that seemed to be his preferred thinking spot. I don't want a wife I barely know any more than you want a husband who terrifies you. But the alternative is watching you die because you were brave enough to save my mother. So I'm damned either way. Yes. He turned to face her, and his expression was brutally honest. You're damned because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time and made a choice that should have been heroic but instead became a curse. I'm sorry for that. Genuinely sorry. But sorry doesn't change reality. Jasmine felt tears threatening again, hot and desperate behind her eyes. I need time. I need to think. You have until tonight, Mrs. Park said, her tone allowing no argument. The Busan Tigers will be looking for you by now. They'll have checked your apartment, your workplace. They'll be watching for any sign of you. The longer we wait, the more dangerous this becomes for everyone. Tonight? You want me to decide about marriage by tonight? I want you to decide if you want to live. Mrs. Park's voice softened. I know this is terrifying, child. I know it feels impossible. But sometimes the only way forward is through the impossible. Jinwoo moved back to the table, and this time he did sit, though his posture remained rigid. If you agree, the ceremony will be small. Just family and key associates. We'll make it look like a traditional arrangement, something that's been planned for months. No one will question it because questioning me is hazardous to their health. How romantic, Jasmine said bitterly. Something flickered in his eyes. I never said it would be romantic. I said it would keep you alive. Mrs. Park stood, smoothing down her hanbok. I'll leave you two to talk. Jasmine, whatever you decide, know that I'm grateful for what you did. You saved my life. That's not something I'll ever forget. She moved toward the door, then paused. Jinwoo, be kind. She's earned that much. Then she was gone, and Jasmine was alone with the man she was apparently supposed to marry in a matter of hours. The silence stretched between them, heavy and awkward. Jinwoo poured tea with steady hands, sliding a cup across to Jasmine. She took it automatically, grateful for something to do with her shaking hands. You can say no, he said finally. I want you to know that. If you refuse, I'll find another way to protect you. It won't be as effective, and it will be dangerous, but I'll try. Why? Jasmine looked up at him. Why do you care? You don't know me. I'm nobody to you. You're the woman who saved my mother's life without hesitation. That makes you someone. He took a sip of his own tea. And despite what you might think, I'm not a monster. I don't want your blood on my hands because I failed to protect you. But you're okay with trapping me in a marriage I don't want. No. His answer was immediate and honest. I'm not okay with it. But I'm less okay with you dying. So if I have to choose between your freedom and your life, I choose your life. Even if you hate me for it. Jasmine studied him over the rim of her teacup. He looked tired, she realized. Exhausted in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. This man who commanded respect through fear and violence looked like he was carrying the weight of the world, and now she was adding to that burden. If I agree, she said slowly, what would this marriage actually look like? Would you expect? I mean, would we have to? No. He understood what she was asking immediately. This would be a marriage in name only. You'd have your own room, your own space. I wouldn't touch you unless you wanted me to, and given that you look at me like I'm a predator about to strike, I'm guessing that's not happening anytime soon. Despite everything, Jasmine almost smiled. You noticed that? Hard not to. You flinch every time I move. He set down his cup. Look, I know what I am. I know what I do. I'm not going to pretend to be a good man because I'm not. But I have a code, and that code says you don't force women into anything they don't want. So this marriage would be business. Protection. Nothing more. Until when? Until it's safe for you to leave. Months, maybe. A year at most. He paused. Or forever, if you decide you prefer being alive and protected over being free and vulnerable. The honesty was somehow worse than lies would have been. Jasmine set down her teacup before she dropped it. What about my family? My mother, my sister in Lagos. They think I'm working an honest job, saving money to bring my sister here for university. How do I explain this to them? Jinwoo's expression shifted, something like sympathy crossing his features. You don't. Not yet. Not until it's safe. The Busan Tigers will look for leverage against you, and family is always the easiest leverage. So I just disappear from their lives? Let them think I'm dead or abandon them. Or you tell them a version of the truth. That you met someone. That you're getting married. That you're happy. His voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. It's not ideal, but it keeps them safe. If they know nothing, they can't be used against you. Jasmine closed her eyes, trying to think through the fog of shock and fear and exhaustion. Every option was terrible. Every choice led to pain. But at least one choice led to being alive to feel that pain. If I do this, she said slowly, opening her eyes to meet his, I need your word on something. Name it. My family gets taken care of. Not just money, though they need that. Real security. My sister's university fees, my mother's medical care, everything. They don't suffer because of a choice I made. Done. He didn't hesitate. I'll set up accounts in their names. Anonymous, untraceable. They'll never want for anything. And when this ends, when it's supposedly safe for me to leave, you let me go. No conditions, no strings. I walk away with enough money to start over somewhere new. Agreed. He leaned forward. Anything else? Jasmine thought about it, about all the things she should probably demand, all the protections she should insist on. But her mind was too tired, too overwhelmed. Just one more thing. Don't lie to me. Whatever happens, whatever danger we're in, don't treat me like a child who can't handle the truth. I deserve to know what I'm walking into. Something shifted in Jinwoo's expression, a flash of respect that surprised her. That I can promise. He extended his hand across the table. So is that a yes? Jasmine stared at his hand, at the calluses on his palm that spoke of violence and survival. This was it. The moment where her life split into before and after. The moment where Jasmine Akeji, the waitress from Lagos who sent money home and dreamed of someday opening her own restaurant, ceased to exist. She reached out and took his hand. His grip was warm, steady, unexpectedly gentle. It's a yes, she whispered. God help me, it's a yes. The next 6 hours passed in a blur that felt more like a fever dream than reality. Minseo appeared with a team of women who descended on Jasmine like a highly organized storm. They did her hair, her makeup, her nails. They dressed her in a hanbok that must have cost a fortune, layers of silk in deep red and gold that whispered when she moved. Traditional wedding colors, Minseo explained as she adjusted the elaborate headdress. Red for passion and good fortune. Gold for prosperity and eternal love. Her expression was wry. Though I suppose in your case, it's more about sending the right message than actual romance. Jasmine stared at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. She looked like a bride. She looked like she belonged in this world of silk and secrets and casual violence. The illusion was so perfect it made her want to scream. How do I look? She asked, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. Minseo studied her critically, then nodded. Like someone worth starting a war over. Which is exactly what Park SSI needs people to think. I'm terrified, Jasmine admitted. That too. Mrs. Park entered the room then, and she actually gasped when she saw Jasmine. Oh child, you're beautiful. I'm terrified, Jasmine repeated. That too. Mrs. Park came closer, reaching up to adjust a strand of hair that had escaped the elaborate styling. But terror and beauty often walk hand in hand. You'll do fine. Just remember to breathe, bow when you're supposed to, and try not to look like you're being led to your execution. Even though I kind of am. Mrs. Park's smile was sad. Even though. The ceremony was held in a private room of the park compound that Jasmine hadn't seen before. It was beautiful in a stark, traditional way, with wooden floors polished to a mirror shine and silk screens painted with cranes and mountains. Maybe 30 people sat in neat rows, all of them dressed in formal hanboks, all of them watching Jasmine with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. Jinwoo waited at the front of the room, and Jasmine's breath caught when she saw him. He wore a traditional hanbok in deep blue and black, the colors making his broad shoulders seem even wider. He looked like a prince from a historical drama, powerful and untouchable. But when their eyes met across the room, she saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clasped too tightly in front of him. He was as nervous as she was, she realized. This might be strategic for him, but it still meant binding his life to a stranger's. Mrs. Park guided Jasmine to the front, and the ceremony began. It was all in Korean, words Jasmine didn't understand flowing around her like water. She bowed when Mrs. Park gently pushed her shoulders down, accepted the cups of tea that were pressed into her hands, went through motions that felt both ancient and completely alien. Through it all, Jinwoo remained steady beside her. When it came time to bow to each other, he met her eyes and something passed between them. Not love, not even really understanding, but maybe acknowledgement. Two people caught in circumstances neither wanted, trying to survive the best way they knew how. When the officiant finally declared them married, there was polite applause from the assembled guests. But Jasmine could feel the undercurrent of shock, of disapproval, of calculation. These people were assessing her, measuring her worth, deciding whether she was an asset or a liability to their organization. You did well, Jinwoo murmured as they turned to face their guests. His hand found hers, warm and steady, and she realized he was trying to ground her. Just a little longer. Then we can escape. Escape to what? She whispered back. We're married now. To dinner. And then to your own room where you can process this however you need to. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so casual it seemed unconscious. I meant what I said. This is business. You don't owe me anything beyond the appearance of unity. Jasmine wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this would stay as simple as he made it sound. But nothing in her life had ever been simple, and she doubted this would be any different. The reception was held in the compound's main dining hall, a space large enough to host 100 people comfortably. The food was elaborate, course after course of traditional Korean dishes that Jasmine barely tasted. She smiled when people approached to offer congratulations, bowed when Mrs. Park nudged her, and tried not to let her panic show on her face. They're all staring at me, she murmured to Jin-woo during a brief moment alone. They're assessing you. It's what we do. He handed her a glass of water, seeming to notice she hadn't touched the wine. Some of them are curious. Some are offended that I'm married outside our world. Some are trying to figure out how to use you against me. That's comforting. I didn't say it to comfort you. I said it so you'd be prepared. He gestured subtly toward a man in his 50s who was watching them with barely concealed hostility. That's Uncle Kwon. He wanted me to marry his daughter. Consider him an enemy. How many enemies do I have now? In this room? Maybe a dozen. His voice was matter of fact. In Seoul? Hundreds. But they can't touch you now. You're mine, and anyone who harms what's mine answers to me. The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, it was oddly reassuring. At least someone in this room of strangers was on her side, even if his reasons were purely strategic. A young man approached then, handsome with an edge of danger about him. He bowed to Jin-woo, then turned to Jasmine with open curiosity. So this is the famous bride. The woman who took a knife for our matriarch. Jasmine, this is Dae-young, my second in command. Jin-woo's voice carried a warning. Dae-young, this is my wife. Treat her with respect. Of course, Hyungnim. But Dae-young's eyes were calculating as they studied Jasmine. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Park. Though I admit, when I heard about the wedding, I thought it was a joke. It's no joke, Jin-woo said flatly. Clearly, Dae-young smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I look forward to getting to know you better. After all, we're family now. He moved away, and Jasmine felt Jin-woo's tension ratchet up another notch. He doesn't trust me, she observed. He doesn't trust anyone. It's why I keep him close. Jin-woo guided her toward the exit with a gentle hand on her lower back. Come on, you've done enough for tonight. Let's get you somewhere quiet. They left the reception amid more polite applause and knowing looks. The walk through the compound's corridors felt endless, Jasmine's elaborate hanbok making every step a challenge. Jin-woo matched his pace to hers, patient and steady beside her. Finally, they reached a door she didn't recognize. Jin-woo opened it, revealing a bedroom that was somehow both luxurious and comfortable. Soft lighting, a massive bed with too many pillows, and a sitting area with a view of a private garden. This is your room, he said, stepping aside to let her enter. Mine is across the hall if you need anything. The bathroom is through there, and Min-seo stocked the closet with clothes that should fit. There's a panic button by the bed if you ever feel unsafe. Press it, and I'll be here in seconds. Jasmine turned to look at him, this stranger who was now legally her husband. You really meant it. About this being in name only. I really meant it. His expression was earnest. I've done a lot of terrible things in my life, Jasmine, but forcing myself on a woman who's already been through hell isn't going to be one of them. The sincerity in his voice made something in her chest loosen slightly. Thank you. For that, at least. He nodded, starting to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, you were brave today. Braver than most people I know would have been. I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. Same thing usually. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll start figuring out how to make this arrangement work. Then he was gone, and Jasmine was finally, blessedly alone. She stood in the center of the room for a long moment, still wearing the elaborate hanbok, still processing everything that had happened in the space of 48 hours. Then, like a dam breaking, the tears came. She sank onto the bed and cried for everything she'd lost, everything she'd become, everything she could never go back to being. The crying eventually exhausted itself, leaving Jasmine hollow and numb. She managed to get out of the hanbok, fumbling with the complicated ties until she wanted to scream. Finally free of it, she stood under the shower and let the hot water wash away the makeup, the hairspray, the illusion of being someone she wasn't. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a robe that was softer than sin, she found her phone on the nightstand. Her old phone, the cheap one she'd bought when she first arrived in Korea. Someone had charged it, but when she turned it on, there were no messages, no missed calls. Her old life really had been erased. She stared at it for a long moment, then made a decision. She pulled up her mother's number and hit call before she could talk herself out of it. It rang 4 times before her mother's voice came through, cautious and sleep-fogged. Hello? Jasmine. Hi, Mama. The words came out strangled, and Jasmine had to clear her throat. I'm sorry for calling so late. Jasmine. Oh, my baby, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days. Your landlord said you moved out. Your workplace said you quit. I thought something terrible had happened. Mama, please. I'm fine. I'm safe. Jasmine closed her eyes against the guilt. I'm sorry I didn't call sooner. Things have been complicated. Complicated how? Her mother's voice sharpened with concern. Jasmine, what's going on? You sound strange. I met someone. The lie felt thick on her tongue, but it was the closest to truth she could manage. A man. It happened fast, maybe too fast, but mama, he's good to me. He takes care of me. Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of man makes you quit your job and disappear without telling your family? The kind who has money and wants to protect me. Jasmine opened her eyes, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. I know it sounds crazy. I know you're worried. But I'm okay. Better than okay. Are you in trouble? Did this man do something to you? Jasmine, please, just tell me the truth. The desperation in her mother's voice nearly broke her. I'm not in trouble. Not the way you think. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Another long silence. Then her mother sighed, the sound heavy with maternal concern and resignation. I've always trusted you, baby, even when I didn't understand your choices. But promise me something. Promise me that if you need help, if you need to come home, you'll call me. No matter what. I promise, Mama. Tears were sliding down her face again. I love you. Tell Adana I love her too. And Mama, there's going to be some money coming. For Adana's school, for your medical bills, for everything. Please don't refuse it. Please just let me help. Jasmine. Please, Mama. It's important to me. Her mother was quiet for a moment. This man, he's the one sending money. Yes. Then he must care for you very much. There was something in her mother's voice, a note of understanding that Jasmine didn't expect. Or he's trying to buy your silence about something. Either way, baby, be careful. Men with money often have dangerous secrets. I know, Mama. I'll be careful. They talked for a few more minutes, about nothing and everything, about Adana's grades, and the neighbors back home, and the weather. Normal things that felt surreal given everything that had happened. When they finally hung up, Jasmine felt both better and worse. Connected and isolated all at once. She was staring out the window at the garden below when a soft knock came at the door. Come in, she called, expecting Mincio. But it was Jean Wu who entered, carrying a tray with tea and what looked like pain medication. He'd changed out of his formal hanbok into comfortable clothes, sweatpants and a t-shirt that made him look younger, more human. I heard you crying, he said quietly, setting the tray on the table near the sitting area. I thought you might need something. Embarrassment flooded through her. The walls are that thin. No. I was listening at the door like a creep because I was worried about you. His honesty was startling. Sorry. Occupational hazard. I'm not good at trusting people to be okay. Despite everything, Jasmine almost smiled. At least you're honest about it. He gestured to the tray. Tea helps. Or so my mother always says. And you should take the pain medication. Your shoulder must be killing you. He was right. The adrenaline of the day had worn off, leaving the injury throbbing with renewed intensity. Jasmine moved to the sitting area, accepting the pills and tea gratefully. Jean Wu sat across from her, not too close, but close enough to talk without raising their voices. You called your mother. It wasn't a question. You were listening to that too? No. But I know the look of someone who just had a hard conversation with family. He poured himself tea, his movements precise and controlled. How did it go? About as well as could be expected when you're lying to your mother about marrying into a crime family. Jasmine took a sip of tea, letting the warmth spread through her. I told her I met someone. That you're taking care of me. She's worried, but trying to be supportive. That must have been difficult. Everything about this is difficult. She met his eyes over the rim of her cup. But thank you for setting up the money for them. My mother didn't say it, but I could hear the relief in her voice when I mentioned it. It was the least I could do. Literally. He set down his cup. Jasmine, I want you to know something. This situation, this marriage, it's not what either of us would have chosen. But I'm going to do everything in my power to make it as bearable as possible for you. That means respecting your space, your choices, your autonomy. You're not my prisoner. You're under my protection. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels pretty similar. He flinched slightly at that, and Jasmine felt a pang of guilt. He was trying, she could see that, trying to be decent in an indecent situation. I'm sorry, she said quietly. That wasn't fair. You've been nothing but respectful since this started. I'm just scared and angry and taking it out on you. Take it out on me all you want. God knows I deserve it. He leaned back in his chair. For what it's worth, I'm scared too. I've fought wars, survived assassination attempts, built an empire on blood and fear. But the idea of being responsible for another person's happiness, even in this limited capacity, terrifies me. The vulnerability in his admission surprised her. Why? Because I'm not good at it. Being responsible for happiness. I'm good at survival, at strategy, at violence. But making someone feel safe and valued and cared for. He shook his head. That's not in my skill set. You're doing okay so far, Jasmine offered. The tea was thoughtful. The pain medication. Checking on me, even though it meant admitting you were eavesdropping. A small smile tugged at his lips. Set the bar low enough, and even I can clear it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, drinking their tea and existing in the strange liminal space between strangers and something more. Not friends, not yet. But maybe not enemies either. Can I ask you something? Jasmine said finally. Anything. That man at the reception. Dae-young. You said he's your second in command. but you seem tense around him. Should I be worried? Jin-woo's expression went carefully neutral. Dae-young is loyal to the organization, but he's also ambitious, and he doesn't like change. You represent a massive change to how things have always been done. So yes, be careful around him. Don't trust him. Don't tell him anything you don't want getting back to my enemies. Does he know this marriage is strategic? That it's not real? He suspects, but he can't prove anything, and that's what matters. Jin-woo leaned forward. In this world, perception is reality. If we can convince everyone that this marriage is real, that you're important to me beyond strategy, then it becomes real in all the ways that matter. So we have to pretend, in front of everyone. Yes, can you do that? Jasmine thought about it. Thought about pretending to be in love with this dangerous, complicated man. Thought about playing a role that felt both impossible and strangely intriguing. I was a waitress, she said finally. I spent 2 years pretending to be happy while getting yelled at by rude customers and working myself to exhaustion. I think I can manage pretending to be married. That's not quite the same thing. No, she agreed. But I'm a fast learner. And something tells me failing at this particular performance would have consequences worse than getting fired. Jin-woo's expression was grave. Much worse. Which is why I'm going to help you. We'll practice, work on our story, make sure we present a united front. My mother will help too. She's better at the social aspects than I am. What's our story supposed to be? How did we meet? How long have we been together? We met 6 months ago. You were working at a restaurant I frequent. I was immediately drawn to your strength and beauty. We've been seeing each other quietly since then, and after the attack, I realized I didn't want to waste any more time. I wanted to make you mine officially. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was reciting a grocery list rather than crafting a romantic narrative. That's very direct. It fits my reputation. I'm not known for patience or subtlety. He stood, collecting the tea tray. Get some rest. Tomorrow starts your education in being a crime boss's wife. It's going to be intense. Looking forward to it, Jasmine said dryly. He paused at the door. Jasmine? Thank you. For what? For not making this harder than it has to be. For trying. His eyes met hers, and there was genuine gratitude there. I know you didn't ask for any of this, but you're handling it with more grace than most people would. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the lingering warmth of tea and unexpected kindness. The next morning came too early. Jasmine woke to Min-seo shaking her shoulder gently. Time to get up, Mrs. Park. You have a long day ahead. The title still felt foreign, like a piece of clothing that didn't quite fit. But Jasmine forced herself out of bed, wincing at the stiffness in her injured shoulder. Min-seo had laid out clothes for her, simple but elegant. Designer jeans, a silk blouse, leather boots that probably cost more than Jasmine used to make in a month. What's on the schedule? Jasmine asked as Min-seo helped her dress, her movements efficient and practiced. Language lessons with Mrs. Park this morning. Then lunch with some of the family wives. This afternoon, self-defense training. Evening is free, but there's a family dinner tonight where you'll be formally introduced to the extended clan. Min-seo's tone was neutral, but Jasmine caught the sympathy in her eyes. Sounds exhausting. It is, but necessary. These people will test you. You need to be ready. The language lesson with Mrs. Park was held in a sunlit room that looked out over the compound's gardens. The old woman was patient but demanding, drilling Jasmine on basic Korean phrases and the complicated hierarchy of formal speech. In our world, language is power, Mrs. Park explained. Knowing when to be formal, when to be casual, when to use honorifics. This tells people where you fit in the structure. Right now, you're my daughter-in-law. That puts you above most people in this organization. But you have to know how to claim that power. Jasmine struggled through the phrases, her tongue tripping over the unfamiliar sounds. But Mrs. Park was encouraging, correcting gently, and praising every small victory. You have a good ear, she said after an hour. You'll pick this up faster than you think. I hope so. I feel like I'm drowning. Mrs. Park reached over and patted her hand. Everyone feels that way at first. When I married into this family 40 years ago, I was just a farmer's daughter from Jeju Island. I knew nothing about this world. But I learned, and I survived, and eventually I thrived. You will too. What if I don't want to thrive? What if I just want to survive until I can leave? Mrs. Park's expression grew serious. Then you'll be miserable and vulnerable. This world respects strength, Jasmine. Not physical strength, though that helps, but the strength to claim your place, to refuse to be diminished. If you approach this as temporary, as something to endure, people will sense that weakness. And in this world, weakness gets you killed. The words sent a chill through Jasmine. So I have to commit. Fully. Even though this is all a lie. The situation may be a lie, but your strength, your courage, your will to survive, those are real. Build on what's real. Let everything else fall into place around it. Lunch with the family wives was exactly as uncomfortable as Jasmine expected. 5 women, all Korean, all elegant, all studying Jasmine like she was a specimen under glass. They spoke in rapid Korean that Jasmine couldn't follow, though she caught her name mentioned more than once. Finally, the oldest of them, a woman named Mrs. Cho, switched to English. So, you're the one who saved our matriarch. I did what anyone would do, Jasmine said carefully, remembering Jinwoo's advice about humility. But you're not just anyone, are you? Mrs. Cho's smile didn't reach her eyes. You're African. From Nigeria, I heard. How did you end up in Korea? I came for work. To save money for my family. And now you've married the most eligible man in our organization. Quite the upgrade from waitressing. The words were polite, but the implication was clear. Gold digger. Opportunist. Jasmine felt anger spark in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. I didn't marry Jinwoo for money. I married him because he asked, and because refusing would have put me in danger. From the Busan Tigers. Yes, we heard about that. Another woman, younger, spoke up. It must be frightening, knowing there are people who want you dead. It is, Jasmine admitted. But I'm trying to adapt. Adaptation is important. Mrs. Cho took a delicate sip of her tea. Tell me, do you plan to have children with Jinwoo? The question caught Jasmine off guard. We haven't discussed that. Of course you haven't. You barely know each other. Mrs. Cho's smile was sharp. But it's important, you know. For the family line. Mrs. Park is eager for grandchildren. I'm sure she's pressuring you both. Jasmine thought about denying it, but something in Mrs. Cho's eyes told her the woman was testing her. Looking for weak points. Mrs. Park has been nothing but kind to me. Whatever she wants for the future, I'm sure she'll discuss it with us privately. How diplomatic. Mrs. Cho set down her teacup. Well, Mrs. Park, I suppose we'll see if you last. Many women have tried to make a place in this family. Not all of them succeeded. It wasn't until later, when Jasmine was changing for her self-defense training, that she realized the comment had been a threat. Or maybe a warning. Either way, it left her feeling more isolated than ever. The self-defense training was held in a gym in the compound's basement. Jinwoo was waiting for her, wearing training clothes and an expression that was all business. A man stood beside him, compact and muscular with the easy grace of someone who'd spent his life fighting. This is Master Kim, Jinwoo introduced. He's going to teach you how to defend yourself. Basic strikes, how to break holds, how to use your environment as a weapon. I thought you said I was protected, Jasmine said nervously. You are. But protection can fail. Guards can be bribed or killed. Security can be breached. I want you to have options beyond screaming for help. His expression was grim. In this world, the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. The training was brutal. Master Kim didn't go easy on her despite her injured shoulder, though he was careful not to aggravate the wound. He taught her how to strike vulnerable points, how to use an attacker's momentum against them, how to recognize danger before it became deadly. Jinwoo watched from the sidelines, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But when Master Kim had Jasmine practice breaking a chokehold, and she actually succeeded, throwing the instructor off balance, Jinwoo's lips quirked in what might have been approval. After an hour, Master Kim called a break. Jasmine collapsed against the wall, sweating and exhausted. Jinwoo appeared with water, offering it without comment. I'm terrible at this. Jasmine gasped between gulps. You're learning. That's different. He sat beside her on the floor, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Master Kim says you have good instincts. You react fast, you don't freeze. That's more important than technique. The wives at lunch think I'm a gold digger who won't last. Jinwoo's jaw tightened. Let me guess. Mrs. Cho led the attack. How did you know? Because she wanted me to marry her niece. And because she's a vicious gossip who enjoys making people uncomfortable. He took a swig from his own water bottle. Don't let her get to you. She has no real power beyond her ability to make people feel small. She asked about children. Whether we were planning to have them. Something flickered across Jinwoo's face, too quick for Jasmine to identify. And what did you say? That we hadn't discussed it. Which is true. Very true. He was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I don't expect that from you. Children. This marriage is complicated enough without adding that to the mix. Good. Because I'm definitely not ready for that. Jasmine paused. Do you want children? Eventually, I mean. In a real marriage. He considered the question seriously. I used to think I did. Family, legacy, all of that. But the older I get, the more I realize this life isn't one you should bring children into. It's too dangerous, too uncertain. Every day I wake up knowing someone might try to kill me. That's no environment for a child. That's sad. It's realistic. He stood, offering her a hand up. Come on. One more round. Then you're free until dinner. The final round of training was even harder than the first. By the time Master Kim dismissed them, Jasmine could barely walk. Jinwoo walked her back to her room, his pace slow to match her exhausted shuffle. You did well today, he said as they reached her door. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you're adapting faster than most people would. Most people don't have a choice. True. He paused. About tonight. The family dinner. It's going to be difficult. More questions, more judgment, more people trying to figure out how to use you or get rid of you. But I'll be beside you the entire time. If anyone crosses a line, I'll handle it. Thank you. Jasmine hesitated. Jinwoo, why are you being so kind to me? I mean, I know we're married and you have to protect me. But you go beyond that. The tea last night, checking on me, walking me back to my room. You don't have to do those things. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Maybe because kindness is the one thing I can give you that this situation hasn't taken away. Everything else, your freedom, your choices, your old life, I've played a part in destroying. The least I can do is try to make the destruction more bearable. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her with words that felt heavier than they should. The family dinner that night was a test of endurance. 20 people sat around the massive table, all of them watching Jasmine with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. Uncle Quan was there, his hostility barely concealed. Mrs. Cho sat with the other wives, her expression calculating. Jinwoo sat at the head of the table with Jasmine to his right and Mrs. Park to his left. The positioning was deliberate, showing everyone where Jasmine ranked in the family hierarchy. The meal started with polite conversation, but halfway through, Uncle Quan cleared his throat. Jinwoo SSI, we must discuss this marriage. Surely you understand our concerns. Jinwoo's expression went cold. I understand that my personal life is not up for discussion at a family dinner. But this isn't just personal, is it? You've married an outsider. Someone who knows nothing of our ways, our traditions, our business. Uncle Quan's voice dripped with disdain. How can we trust her? How can we be sure she won't betray us? You can be sure because I vouch for her. Jinwoo's voice was deadly quiet. And questioning my judgment is questioning my leadership. I'm not questioning your leadership. I'm questioning your heart. Uncle Quan gestured toward Jasmine. You married this girl out of sentiment, out of gratitude for what she did for your mother. But sentiment is weakness in our world. You know this. Jasmine felt every eye in the room shift to her, waiting to see how she'd respond. She could feel Jinwoo's tension beside her, the way his hand had tightened into a fist on the table. He was ready to defend her, ready to escalate this into something violent if necessary. But Mrs. Park had been right. This world respected strength. And if Jasmine couldn't claim her place here, she'd always be vulnerable. She set down her chopsticks carefully and met Uncle Quan's eyes. You're right. I know nothing about your ways, your traditions, your business. I'm an outsider who stumbled into this world by accident. But I saved Mrs. Park